September 18, 1961. A DC-6, a dense jungle, and a mystery that still haunts the United Nations. The world remembers Dag Hammarskjöld as the second Secretary General of the United Nations, a man dedicated to peace in an era of intense Cold War brinkmanship. His tenure was marked by a relentless pursuit of diplomacy, often putting him at odds with powerful global players. But his life ended abruptly, not on the negotiating table, but in a fiery plane crash in Ndola, northern Rhodesia. The official verdict was a tragic accident, pilot error. Yet, for over 6 decades, persistent questions have lingered. Whispers of foul play, covert operations, and shadowy figures have refused to dissipate, suggesting a far more sinister explanation for the demise of this influential global statesman. The truth, many believe, remains buried in the wreckage. Hammarskjöld was on a crucial mission to broker a ceasefire in the Congo crisis, a brutal post-colonial conflict fueled by rich mineral resources and proxy Cold War interests. Katanga, the secessionist province, was a particular flashpoint, its vast copper and cobalt mines coveted by various factions and international corporations. His aircraft, the Albertina, a DC-6, was approaching Ndola Airport in the dead of night. On board were 15 others, including UN staff and Swedish bodyguards. They were hoping to meet Mais Tisham, the leader of Katanga, to negotiate peace, an outcome that would have significant implications for global power dynamics. At 00:13 on September 18th, the Albertina made its last radio contact, reporting an imminent landing. Then silence. For hours, no one knew its fate. Search efforts were delayed, hampered by confusion and what some would later describe as deliberate obstruction, a critical detail we'll return to. The wreckage was eventually found 15 hours later, deep in the Rhodesian bush, just 15 kilometers from the airport. It was a scene of utter devastation. Only one survivor was pulled from the inferno, an American security officer named Harold Julian, whose fragmented testimony would add further layers to the mystery. Julian initially claimed there had been an explosion on board before the crash. He spoke of Hammarskjöld saying, get out," just before the impact. Days later, he died from his injuries, taking any further direct eyewitness accounts with him. This tantalizing detail, however, was later downplayed by official inquiries. The initial Rhodesian inquiry concluded pilot error. They suggested the pilots descended too low, too fast, colliding with trees. But this explanation failed to satisfy many, especially those who knew Hammarskjöld's mission and the powerful forces arrayed against him. A subsequent UN inquiry in 1962 found no conclusive evidence of sabotage, but acknowledged the possibility. It highlighted conflicting eyewitness testimonies and the inexplicable delay in locating the crash site. The seeds of doubt were firmly planted, and they began to grow. Over the decades, new evidence and testimonies have emerged, painting a very different picture. In 1998, a South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission heard testimony about a plot involving Western intelligence agencies and mercenaries to assassinate Hammarskjöld. This was a bombshell. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence came from a former Rhodesian pilot, Captain Charles Southall, who claimed to have intercepted radio communications on the night of the crash. He reported hearing a pilot say, "I have hit it. There are flames. It is going down." This suggested an aerial attack. Further documents declassified in the early 2000s hinted at CIA and MI6 involvement in the Congo, as well as their interest in Hammarskjöld's activities. While not definitive proof of assassination, they revealed a climate of intense surveillance and animosity towards the UN Secretary General. In 2013, a panel of experts appointed by the UN revisited the case. Their report, based on newly available information, concluded that it was plausible the plane had been subjected to an attack or threat. They cited new evidence from witnesses who described seeing another aircraft in the sky near the Albertina. The UN report also highlighted the distinct holes found in Hammarskjöld's body and the bodies of some of his escorts, inconsistent with typical plane crash injuries. Some speculate these were bullet wounds, suggesting an attack before or during the crash, a detail that was dismissed in earlier inquiries. The motive for assassination is not difficult to discern. Hammarskjöld's efforts to unify the Congo and prevent Katanga's secession threatened powerful mining interests and the strategic Cold War objectives of certain Western powers. He was seen as an obstacle, a man standing in the way of economic and political gain. Moreover, the perception of the UN as an independent, influential force was a challenge to the superpowers. Hammarskjöld was building a UN that could act decisively, not just as a forum for debate. This vision, for some, was simply too dangerous to allow. So was it an accident, a tragic error in judgment? Or was it a meticulously planned assassination, a cold-blooded act to remove a powerful figure who dared to challenge the established order? The official narrative has been challenged time and again, but no definitive perpetrator has ever been identified. The mystery of Dag Hammarskjöld's death remains one of the UN's darkest chapters, a stark reminder of the dangerous intersection of power, politics, and unresolved historical questions. The calls for a full, transparent investigation continue, driven by the belief that the truth, however inconvenient, must eventually emerge. The legacy of Hammarskjöld endures, not only as a symbol of peace, but as a chilling example of how those who strive for it can become targets in the shadows of international intrigue. Explore the shadowy world of Cold War covert operations next.